I would like to start this video by saying that I actually quite like the proximity and control mechanics in EU5, but I have been wondering, what would a return to an EU4 based system for control actually look like? So to recap, you get 100 control if you have a full core on the place, 10% if you have a territorial core, that is to say you've integrated it but have not cored the province by accepting the local culture, and 0 control for uncored, without proximity being a factor affecting the control. Well, you don't have to wonder, because I made a mod for E5 that brings back the EU4 control system, doing, well, just that, as well as removing the proximity impact on control, aka making proximity functionally useless. The other thing to mention is that, of course, within EU4 you had to deal with autonomy changes and autonomy takers, but I'm going to keep the control takers and changes from the base game for that, within this video. That being said, before we jump in and look around, just a quick bit stop to say, a like would be appreciated, and a subscription would be amazing. 100k subs remains an insane goal, but I do believe, so let's keep it going. Otherwise, if you're interested in EU5 or anything else in the Paradox store, please do use code Lemon Cake, it does help support the channel. Right though, that is certainly enough self-shitting, so let's get into the video proper. Right, so here we are, I've loaded in as France for this demonstration. I think France is a pretty good country to demonstrate this with, because if we go ahead and check our integration map mode, we can see that we have a bunch of our land cored, we have a bunch of our land territorially cored, so partially cored as it were, integrated, and then we of course have our integrated conquer settlements as well for the demonstration. So if we now go ahead and move to the control map mode, that is over here, we have 100 control everywhere that we've caught it. We have 10 control on all of our integrated rural settlements, and of course certain areas are going to have slightly better control, because for example this town here is getting 10% max control from its integrated status, it is getting 5% from the town, and I believe 5% still from the temple. So I've kept those modifiers for those that wish to use them. Otherwise, you're going to need to obtain further coring. So yes, the city of choice here, for example, being a city, you can actually get up to 25% control, but if this was vanilla, obviously, because of the proximity, you'll have a bit better control over in this area. That being said, if you take a look at these conquered provinces, even if they are a town in certain cases, yeah, the control here, well, actually isn't that bad. It's still 10% because of the town and temple. So can still be done to even get some control within these conquered territories. But yes, this is for every nation in the game. So this is England, as you can see. They have some debuffs down in Cornwall because of their unique buildings as stanary courts, and also because these provinces aren't actually integrated, I've realized. And countries like Poland, which have debuffs to their maximum control, for example, from Banal Lordship, or sorry, Novi 40, are getting minus 10%, so that's a thing that is happening. But otherwise, if you click around, you can see that most places actually have anywhere between 100 to 90 control in their core territories. However, bigger empires, like, for example, the Golden Horde, are still going to have a lot of their empire not even cored, so naturally going to have much lower control on that, but we'll see how that turns out for them. Otherwise, yeah, in many ways, it's a bit of a win harder mod, because we now have a lot more money going for us, because we have a lot more control, but honestly, like, it's not that big of a swing as I expected. Now, I'm not actually, like, max making money here as I would as France, like, I can squeeze out a bit more money, and I guess I would be taxing a bit less in practice, so I'm making 102 ducats, pretty good, but it's not that much more insanely higher than I would have been making normally. And of course, our expenses have increased as well, so that's something to bear in mind. With all of this extra control, that's something that is reflected. The other part that is also worth a mention is because we have so much more control over the areas, our crown power is disproportionately boosted, and I think that makes the debate between centralization and decentralization even more of a weird mess, because you'd think that centralization is now really terrible because the proximity cost does literally nothing, and you have less worries about crown power. But my argument is that I've just nerfed vassals significantly. You're able to get 100% control everywhere. So maybe decentralization is not that worth it because you can just get 100 control everywhere from cores. It's a bit of a weird debate. I think the other part, of course, is that if you have a bunch of subjects, those can use their cabinet actions to core for you. So to some extent, this is back to a buff for subjects. I'm not sure in practice. I'll let you decide will be the best for that. This mod is again available for download from the Steam Workshop. All of the links will be provided. And my question is how will the AI perform with this mod as well? Because while of course there are pretty substantial economic buffs, especially as a player trying to do this, and the knowledge that you don't really need to build roads. I mean, roads aren't entirely useless. They can still be useful for specifically increasing movement speed. So if we take a look at this road, we're going to increase also market access. That is not free. So market access and the movement cost are going to be relevant, but not to the ridiculous costs of road, right? So not usually worth building, I want to say, but I guess useful for military campaigning. Guess my point truly is that, yeah, roads are going to be a lot less useful, and you're going to be scaling your economy faster, so an even more win harder button as the player. But maybe that's the extra kick up the backside the AI needed to compete as well. So I do wonder how this ends up looking like if you actually end up playing this. So I'm going to run an AI only. I'm probably going to just try until the 1600s, see what changes until then. And yeah, I'll let you enjoy that. So, how does the AI do? Well, if you look at the time-lapse I have for you in the background, honestly, I want to conclude it's not that much different. I do believe in the early game it serves again as another buff to the already bigger nations, but let's also be honest, by the mid-game or even the 1450s, larger countries can afford investments into roads and other factors to pretty much get control on the lands they care about anyway. And the difference between, say, 70 control and 100 control isn't that big of a deal either. You just kind of get enough money and enough things from control at that point. I think it favored the Russian tanks a bit more, a bit of a spoiler for the time lapse. They seem to have consolidated nicely eventually, and I want to say there is more consolidation overall, but I'm not sure if it's a significant enough change to really talk about it, which is interesting. I mean, I guess it does make sense that this buffs the bigger countries even more, but I mean, I don't know. It's hard to talk about. I think it certainly buffs blobbing more than it should, but at the same time, blobbing in EU5 is already quite nerfed. I think Egypt has certainly done well, though, and I think Egypt will continue to do well, but even more so specifically within this mod. So I'll let this time lapse stop until the 1600s, feel free to continue to enjoy that, and I'll catch you when that is done, for a final review of that 1600 save. So yeah, here we are in the save, and I do want to say immediately the thing that kind of struck out to me the most is, how did Byzantium survive in 1600 as well? Like, it is still here in Constantinople and only Constantinople, and the Ottoman Empire has kind of failed to conquer it. And I mean, they have a bit of their outposts in Greece as well, which is unusual because they don't actually start with them. But yes, the Byzantine Empire's kind of stuck around, but not as much as I thought they would. That being said, if we do want to look around from these areas, by control, yeah, I mean, the control map mode speaks for itself in many ways. Very, very good control for the vast majority of countries, and this has really, really buffed the bigger countries. Bohemia, of course, hasn't decided to control any of their land outside of Bohemia, but if you look at Austria, for example, they're doing very, very well in that regard. Very big Milan. Burgundy's done quite well, surprisingly, and the thing that also stood out to me is this quite a big guilders. I mean, kind of weird Netherlands setup over here. Cologne, too, has done quite big, and there's some pretty good consolidation in Germany, so I think this kind of favors it. Especially, I think, if we keep running the game, we're going to be seeing more and more consolidation. We also have, like, kind of a Prussia pop out. That's cool, although it is Catholic, so maybe not the best bet, but that is a thing. We haven't really been able to look at the religious map mode because of the way the time lapse was set up. So if we take a look at the religions by country and I guess locations, let's just quickly pop that up. The Catholics have kind of won this one, I feel like. So that's something to bear in mind, especially with the Orthodox world also being kind of crushed and, for all intents and purposes, being reduced to the Russia and Georgia areas. And religions by locations as well. Yeah, there's a bunch more Protestant minorities everywhere, but I think if we take a look at the religions by country, yeah, not looking too good. Although weirdly pale is the Protestant holdout in Ireland. Interesting. But yeah, a lot more consolidation, a lot more controlling and coring, especially done by nations like the Moroccans over here. I mean, they have quite a bit of an empire they're able to extend. And weirdly enough, Egypt as well has built a massive empire that it could really benefit from. I mean, and I think it kind of has by having 100 control down in these areas and then just not really doing anything with them. And this is really, again, if you want to see blobbing and large nations forming, this is great for it. The Yuan Empire did kind of survive. I mean, they had a bit of a couple tumors they had to deal with, shall we say, but they dealt with them, I want to say, well enough, and I think the control certainly helps. For me, though, I think the Great Horde should not have survived, but weirdly, the land they colonized into was quite powerful for them because they actually could get 100 control in there, and that's kind of neat. But they never really managed to integrate more land than they really started with. So yeah, that's the thing. The Great Horde does sometimes survive. They do like to have their civil wars, but they tend to survive surprisingly well, so that's another thing to bear in mind. And yeah, the Horde of the Jalarids also did quite well. I think Timmy just failed to really do much against them, which is a shame. India's a mess, but that's just kind of India. I think Orissa's done quite well, and to me, the biggest surprise is actually VJ not doing too well. Normally, VJ kind of dominates this area, but I see Hoysala. Maybe it's just a one-off game that Hoysala's done quite well in. Regarding the New World, I do think some of these colonies get some ridiculous buffs and strengths. Obviously, because they're colonizing, they kind of dominate population-wise, and, well, that kind of means that they have cores everywhere, and that's really, really powerful over here in the New World. So that's kind of a thing that you'll see, like the Viceroys of Peru here. A bit of a less example, because they're smaller, but some of these mega colonies are going to be doing very, very well, especially over here in the colony of America, which is in a bit of a conflict with the colony of Delaware, sure, but nevertheless, the Norwegians and the English are fighting over the Americans over here, and very specifically, this colony of Higui of France has. Is this modern? I'm not actually sure what state this is. Americans, please do enlighten me. What the French have decided to take instead of the Louisiana Purchase? They've decided to purchase Alabama instead. Would be my best guess, but I'm not actually sure what this is. So yeah, it's quite an interesting world in that regard. Here is religions for those interested, but as you may have guessed, very Catholic. So yeah, that's not much more unusual there, unfortunately. So yeah, more consolidation, more blobbing. I mean, the game feels more EU4-y, to be honest, as weird as that sounds. There is still border gore, don't get me wrong. I mean, whatever's going on here isn't too pretty, but it's almost more reasonable than what you'd sometimes have before. And like this Austria, it just feels more reasonable given that it doesn't have that many like weird outlets. And I mean, the Pope's migrated because Siena's gone on a bit of a murder spree, but it does happen, does happen. Like, and look at that, pretty clean Sardinia. I think weirdly this has somewhat helped border gore, which is not what I expected, but I guess it makes sense, kind of. If you can, well, no, it doesn't, because you'd have 100 control everywhere, so sure, it should be border goring more. I'm not sure, but I want to say I'm happy with this changes. I think it makes the game significantly easier for those that want to play at home, but I mean, if you want to have a power trip and a return to EU4 to some extent, this is certainly something to check out. And I mean, again, it's not really fixed the border or whatever Bohemia's doing over here, but it's a thing. Weirdly enough, I've just realized, yeah, I think Bohemia still has no control there because I haven't called them, but yeah, I think it's gone significantly better than I expected, to be fully honest. And by the looks of it, England is kind of working into Scotland over here and probably will end up leisurely uniting Ireland. You probably will actually see, I would guess, a GB form with the Scotland nearer to the historical time period. And they have France and England have a very historical border right now, unless you look at whatever's going on with France here. But, that's just a thing. Oh, and Japan's having their Sengoku Jidai period continue into an abysmal mess between the two rival shoguns, but that's just kind of how Japan communicates. That happens every time. And Korea, I mean, again, this is a very much an EU4 Korea border. I'm not gonna lie. This is a border I expect Korea to have an EU4. Yeah, turns out you can return to EU4. You just have to return to the EU4 control system. But with that all being said, that is unfortunately all the time I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching, with a special thank you to all my channel members, especially Ark, Solus, Lemon, Lord Zendikar, Nakastan, Hatan, Star72, The Awesome Rabbit, Best for Gaming, Grandma Flavia, Lebarule, W. Hayes, Sol, and Things35, AC Napo, Conspiracy Pizza, Yukata, Dunray, Marvy, Jack, Ryland, Stuart Allen, Andrew Black, Nebula, Zentronic, Twinit, and Aquabird.